Welcome back. In this video, we'll tackle the last big remaining piece of functionality, which is the creation of new to-dos. So over here on the completed version, just to jog your memory, the way that it works is I can type a to-do and then hit enter. So there's no button to click, I just hit enter, and that will then submit and make me a new to-do down here, which I can check off or delete. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is add a listener to the text input that fires when we hit the enter key. To do that, we have a few options. We can use key press or we can use on. We need to start by selecting the input, and rather than leaving it as just input, I'm going to be more specific and say input type equals text. So this will affect all inputs where type equals text, just like that. And then we'll add our dot. And I'll use a key press here. Input type equals text, key press. Here is the callback function. We'll just start with a console.log, and this console.log will run on any key press, not just the enter key. So we'll just do key press and save and go back to the browser and refresh, and we'll open this up here. And as I press a key, you see that I get key press. So I'll hit another key, and that keeps going up. So we don't really want to do anything until the user hits the enter key, so we need to change our code a little bit. In the video where I introduced the key press method, I also talked about the which property on the key press object, and that corresponds to the key that was pressed, or the character code of the key. So we're going to use that here. And we're going to check if the character code is 13, which is the code for the enter key. So we need to work with the event object again. Once again, that can be called anything we want. And then we're going to run if event dot which triple equals the number 13, which is how we check for the enter key. Every single character has its own code, and the enter key is 13. Then we'll just do a console.log. You hit enter, and we'll save. Go back here. Now I'm typing a bunch of keys that aren't enter, and now I'm going to hit enter. And you can see we get console.log, you hit enter. Okay, so rather than just console.logging when we hit enter, what we need to do is take the text out of here, extract it, make a new li that we then add after this one, and then we want to clear this input so the text goes away. So we'll start by extracting the value out, and that one's pretty simple. We'll use the .val method. So we want the value on the input, which we can just do with a simple this.val. So let's do a console.log this.val. Remember that this refers to the input that the key press occurred in. Refresh. Type anything that's not enter, nothing happens. Now if I hit enter, it console.logs the value. As you can see, I typed hello and I hit enter. So let's save that to a variable. Let's call it to-do text equals this.val. So that is grabbing new to-do text from input. And then what we want to do next is create a new li and add to ul. To do that, I'm going to introduce a new method called append. The way that append works is that we first select an element to append to. So we're going to be adding our things, our to-dos. So we'll be adding our to-dos to the ul on the page. So this ul. And we'll be appending li's to that ul. So if I do ul.append, and I can give it a string of HTML. So if I add in li right here, and I just hard code something in to start. So this is a new li that we appended to this ul. Just like that. I select the ul, and this actually selects all uls. We only have one. And then we run .append, and it will take this string and add it to the ul as HTML inside of that UL. So I'll show you that. When we hit enter here, it doesn't matter what we type because we're not using it. It adds in a new LI, and every time I hit enter, it will do that. And if I inspect, you can see it's an LI element that was added inside the UL, just like these are LI elements. So what we want to do next, though, is actually use the to-do text variable. All we need to do is use the plus sign to add that variable in. So we will have two separate opening LI tags and closing LI tags, and we'll use a plus sign and add in to-do text. And this will end up with one big string that has our to-do text, which is whatever the user typed in the input, plus the opening LI and closing LI, and we're appending that to the UL. Refresh, walk dog, and I hit enter, and we get a new LI here. So there's two big issues. One, we want to clear out this input, and two, we don't have the span. Let's start by clearing out the input. All we need to do is run $this .val and give it an empty string where it acts as a setter rather than just a getter. And that should now give us an empty input when I type a new to-do. There we go, our to-do is added, and this is cleared. Next, let's get the span to show back up. So all that we need to do there is inside of our LI, we'll add in a span tag, and that will be appended. And we just need to make sure we have the X right there, and a space, just so that the X has a space between it and the new to-do text. And if we save, we're now appending a new string with an LI with a span inside of it. So feed dog, and we end up with the span and the new LI. However, we have a problem with this code, which is when I add new to-dos, like feed cat, and I try and check off the new ones, they don't actually check off, nor do they delete. The old ones still do, so the LI event is still firing, the span event still fires, but the new to-dos that are dynamically created, the ones that aren't there when the page loads, don't work. This is what I was talking about when I showed you this slide. And it said, in most cases, click and on-click will both get the job done. However, there is one key difference. Click will only add listeners for existing elements. On will add listeners for all potential future elements. And that's what we need to do here is use on, because we want those listeners to be listening on all potential LIs. So I'll open up Sublime here, and I'll demonstrate how we can use on click rather than just click. So it's not a matter of just swapping out to be on. So if I just change this to be an LI on click, just like that, and I leave it like this, basically it's the exact same thing except with on rather than click. And if I go back and refresh, it still works on the original elements, and if I add new ones, it doesn't work. So it's not a matter of just swapping click and on click. What we actually need to do is change our code slightly. So I'm going to show you the change first, and then I'll explain it. So what I did is I wrote ul.onClick, comma, li. The reason I had to do this is that we can only add a listener using jQuery on elements that exist when this code is run the first time. And when this code is run the first time, we don't have all the LIs. We only have 3. So if we add a click listener to LIs, it will only add to those 3. So what we do instead is add a listener to the entire UL parent. So anytime we click on that UL, this listener will fire, except we add this second argument. And what this code does is it says when an LI is clicked inside of a UL, run this code. So we added a listener to an element that exists when the page loads, but we're really only listening to the LIs that are clicked inside of that UL. So let me demonstrate this now. I'll refresh, and let's add some new ones in here. The old ones still work, and the new ones can be checked off as well. But the delete doesn't work, so we need to go back and make the same exact change. So we're going to listen on an event that exists when the page loads with on, and then click, but we only want this code to run when a span is clicked inside of a UL. And if we leave it at that, we should be good to go now. Let's test it out. We can delete the old ones and the new ones, and we can cross both off as well. All right, so let's summarize some of the new material here. The first thing is the append method, which can take a string of HTML, and it will then append those elements to whatever we selected. And the second thing was using on rather than .click, and adding in this ul.onClick, and this second argument that specifies LIs that may or may not have been on the page when it loaded, inside of the UL that definitely was on the page when the page loaded. So we're adding event listeners to the elements that exist when page loads so that we can account for elements that aren't there yet. That's it for our basic functionality. We have a complete to-do list. What we'll focus on in the next video is the styling, and we definitely have a ways to go there.